We all have a lot of questions about the Atlanta Braves offseason, right? Will they fix shortstop? Are they going to add a starter? Let's see if CJ Nitkowski of FanDuel Sports Network can answer them for us. Yes, welcome on in to Braves Today, your home for news, notes, and updates on your Atlanta Braves. I'm your host, Lindsay Crosby. You can follow me on social media at Crosby Baseball. You can follow the show on X Braves_today. We have a Facebook page and an Instagram as well. And you can find all of my written work, bravestoday.com. That's the Braves Today Substack, as this is both a podcast and a newsletter. Super excited for this one. We've got CJ Nitkowski of the Braves broadcast. He's the color analyst there, MLB Network Radio, literally a million other places. We're going to talk about them all at the end of the show. Here to break down Atlanta's offseason, where they go from here. Enjoy. Excited to welcome special guest CJ Nitkowski of FanDuel Sports Network, MLB Network Radio. CJ, thanks for being here. And a lot of stuff's happened in the last week or so. I hope you've had plenty of content for the radio show. I know you and Spilly are doing multiple hours every single day, but it feels like MLB just keeps delivering even though it's the off season.
Well, first of all, Lindsay, thank you for having me. Appreciate it, man. Good to spend some time with you. Yeah, you're right. I think it's an interesting time that, our sport does a pretty good job of, while we get frustrated, slowly kind of letting things trickle throughout the offseason, right? We don't have the free agents frenzy that you get in the NBA. In other places. And that's good for us, right? For those that are still doing media all season long. Spilly and I, Ryan Spilborg's my partner who also does Colorado Rockies television, also does Apple TV, my radio partner over at XM. This week in particular, we're actually working all 5 days together. Usually one of us will miss a day here or there. So that's 15 hours. Yeah, 15 hours of MLB talk for us this week, and then we'll do 4 more together next week. But there has been a lot going on between the awards, between some of the rumblings and the rumors that are out there. Baseball is 365 days a year. There's always something to talk about. Somebody has some story or at least some trade proposal. It never really slows down.
I think at the end of the day, you can argue it's the best sport from the content creation side because there's so many games to talk about. There's so much going on throughout the course of the season. But pivoting to the Braves specifically, we heard from Alex Anthopoulos at the GM meetings. The priorities right now, shortstop and starting pitcher. And I kind of wanted to get your thoughts on upgrading shortstop. I know that there's a contingent of Braves fans who watched Nick Allen and said, hey, defensively, he's a Gold Glove finalist. And he didn't even play the entire season. And there's that faction of fans who think if he can just go in there, play Gold Glove defense, and the rest of the offense can hit like they have in the past, it shouldn't be a problem. Is it unrealistic to think that, yes, you want to upgrade shortstop, and obviously the goal is to re-sign Ha-Seong Kim, and if not, we'll talk about some of the options, but if you had to just let Nick Allen be a Gold Glove caliber vacuum at short and rely on the rest of the offense, I feel like that's not the worst outcome in the world when you look at the money you could save in that scenario if you apply it somewhere else.
I agree. And then we know it's going to be a good pitching staff that's going to rely on the defense. So that is kind of your worst case scenario, which is not a terrible worst case scenario. Yeah. And like you said, the big component there, you know what you're going to get from Nick Allen. And he got even better. I watched him when he was in Oakland, when I was calling games for the Texas Rangers. But then to see him up close every day, he looked even better defensively than what I remember when he was with the A's. So that was really encouraging to see. The component there, though, that has to happen is then the rest of the lineup has to hit, right? We saw it a couple of years ago and how deep this lineup can really be. So from that standpoint, now we're talking 1 through 8. You kind of know what you'll get from Nick Allen. He'll give you some good at-bats here and there. He'll put the ball in play, hit it the other way. He's not going to necessarily slug, but it's that plus glove. So as a worst-case scenario, it's not a terrible one at all because, we don't get to do it. I know it's, and I only cover one sport. I'm a one-trick pony, but you think about plus minus in football. You'll talk about, right, that as a stat. We don't really do it definitively in baseball, but he's a really good example of what he ultimately brings to the table because of the run prevention when he's in the field. I know we have different numbers. We try to put metrics on defense. It's not as clear cut necessarily as something like turnovers, but what he does defensively is significant. And when anytime anybody else would go out there or you're watching another team, you could really see it. And we had that great view from the booth where you're
Mhm.
looking at the middle of the field. And it's even when Michael would miss some games over the last couple of years, you would really notice the difference. That's when it would stick out. So he is, it's not, just a conversation. We throw it out there. He's a good glove. He is a difference maker. So I'm with you. Worst case scenario is not a terrible one.
Yeah, and re-signing Ha-Seong Kim, I may be in the minority. I keep going back to this quote from Andrew Friedman of the Dodgers. I think it was a couple years ago he said this.
Hmm.
If you try to be rational in every free agent, you'll finish third on every free agent. And we've seen good shortstops obviously come through Atlanta, from Rafael Furcal. Dansby Swanson was Gold Glove caliber before he left. He didn't win one until he left. But
Hmm.
it feels like Ha-Seong Kim has the potential to be that good. He has a Gold Glove in his career, but it was a utility Gold Glove.
Hmm.
Is that the type of player, given the issues you've had replacing Dansby, is that the type of the player to be a little bit irrational with and say, hey, if we really think this is the number one area to upgrade, we maybe have to go a little past our comfort zone on the contract? Or is kind of the secret sauce of AA the fact that he's never really done stupid money deals or gone to a contract level that ended up not working out in the end?
There's something to be admired about that, quite honestly. I know fans might get a little bit frustrated, but it's thinking about the long-term future of the organization. There's a lot of good teams that will do exactly what you're talking about. They'll do exactly what Andrew Friedman talks about. And the other side is ugly, right? The other side can be really ugly. There's Hall of Fame level executives like Dave Dombrowski and Theo Epstein who've done some really great things in the game. But when you look at kind of the aftermath at times and some of the contracts that are there, those teams then have to go quiet for a little while because their hands are tied. I think Alex is doing everything he can to try to sustain this thing as long as possible without putting this organization in that position. With that being said, I don't think an overextension of a Ha-Seong Kim contract would do that to you. But I'm thinking about Miguel Cabrera and thinking about Javier Baez, although he did a really nice job of reversing things this year. There's two examples of a couple of guys in Detroit that kind of slowed them down at one point because those contracts became an albatross and they were really problematic. And other teams have gone through it as well after the Red Sox won, after Theo Epstein left there, and the Cubs for that matter. There was some messy contracts that you had to deal with. So he's trying to avoid that at all costs. But the other thing about those teams is they've won. Now, the Tigers didn't win the World Series, but certainly the Red Sox did. Dave Dombrowski's done a good job with the teams where he's put together championship caliber teams. So there is that give and take a little bit. I'm with you. I don't think I have an issue necessarily what an overextending contract would look like for a guy like Ha-Seong Kim, unless it gets out of control. And it is a weak shortstop market. And that's the other problem that you kind of run into. I think we're all keeping our fingers crossed. Was he going to do us a favor and take that player option? We probably knew better, but we were hoping and praying, and that's what we should have been doing. But he did what was smart. And looking at the shortstop market and saying, I'm probably going to be the top guy. I know Bo Bichette's out there, but the defense necessarily doesn't say shortstop long term. So I don't mind getting a little bit uncomfortable necessarily with a contract as long as it's not absurd.
Yeah. You mentioned Dombrowski. First thing I think of is like Taijuan Walker and Nick Castellanos in Philly right now, how they're dealing with Castellanos is $20 million for next year. And there's talk they may just cut him and eat the money. And that's, it's obviously hasn't stopped them from being a winning team, but they also haven't won the World Series. So that's kind of the first thing that I think about. If the Braves aren't able to get Ha-Seong Kim in, I've spent a lot of time and writing articles, doing podcasts about other shortstop options. And I keep going back and forth between the idea of, do you try to trade for a young shortstop, whether it's a prospect like a Jordan Lawler or, one of the teams that is rebuilding that has a younger piece? Or do you go for a veteran, somebody I think you've seen up close and personal with your time in Texas with Corey Seager? Is it at this point, is it just whoever you can manage to get loose from their current team? Or is there actually one path that is better than the other based on where the team is and their competitiveness?
Yeah, I think when you look at the Braves in particular and how the draft went last year and all the shortstops that we saw taken early, not everybody's necessarily going to stick at shortstop, and we know not everybody is going to be a big leaguer. Yeah. I think the one thing I took away from that is that maybe a short-term somebody to fill the gap might be a realistic thing. And if it's just a glove, then you already have that. If you're trying to get a little bit of a better balance of both, then maybe you try to get somebody's younger guy to make that happen. And hopefully one of the guys that you drafted last year ultimately ends up emerging. I know we're a little bit further away on that kind of thing, but it did make me wonder a little bit when I saw the way that the draft went down, that, what is the plan going forward at the shortstop position? Lawler's interesting, right? Because I believe he was playing some outfield in the Arizona Fall League. And so there's not a spot for him necessarily at short. I'm not looking to give him away because he's cheap, but it's a conversation that's probably worth happening. I listen to what we hear about other teams. And the reason I brought up Corey Seager when I did was because when Bruce Bochy did not come back, there was some talk about financial uncertainty in Texas, and it's a limited no trade clause for Corey Seager. I don't know what kind of control he has and what the teams look like. I mean, he seems like he'd be a perfect Atlanta Brave, right? He's a North Carolina guy. Personality-wise, he would just slide in and fit perfect on this club. I know we're probably getting a little selfish and a little greedy when we throw it out there, but because they said that, for me, it's at least worth exploring. Same thing with Jeremy Pena. We had heard last year they were close to getting a deal done. It hasn't happened. He's a 4+ player right now in Houston, and they have a crowded infield, right? They have Carlos Correa now, Isaac Paredes. They're going to figure out how they're going to manage the left side of their infield. They may be interested. Now, the value is really high for a guy like Pena, and it would not come cheaply in form of, what are you sending to Houston? But it's 2 years of control, right? So you maybe feel a little bit better about that, and maybe you can have him ultimately fit in long term. He's everything I've seen from him and times I've talked with him and interviewed him, he's just a really good guy, and I think he would fit in really well. Are those dreams of guys that aren't even really available? Possibly. But because of the things that we've heard regarding the finances with both Pena in particular and the Rangers, I'm at least asking, at least trying to find out. And if it's not there, it's not there. But it's a really thin shortstop market, and so you have to explore every possible option.
Yeah, and my hope is Dana Brown being in Houston, that obviously Alex having a working relationship there, maybe they could work something out if that would be an option, definitely. On the topic of trades, something that I've seen a lot of, I think it came up on Wednesday after some of the reporting from the GM meetings. Alex Anthopoulos talked about the designated hitter position, and his thought was Sean Murphy and Drake Baldwin kind of combining a lot for that position. I've seen some fans asking, hey, if Drake Baldwin's the rookie of the year and he's such a great catcher, why don't we trade Sean Murphy and his $15 million salary? And to me, that feels a little bit dangerous, because if you have a sophomore slump or you have one injury, you're right back to where you were in 2021, where the Braves used 6 different catchers to get through the season. I guess if you try to sell Sean Murphy now, it feels like this is the wrong time, both because of the surgery and because of just how hard it is to find competent catching in Major League Baseball right now, and guys who can work both ways.
Yeah, and he's still a really good defensive catcher, right? I mean, that's the part of it as far as what he has done. When you look at, as far as caught stealing, when you look at, frame rates, which are still going to be important despite the fact that we'll get ABS, he is the better defensive catcher of the two. I think Drake still will continue to improve. We saw that over the course of the season, but I'm with you. I would be a little bit reluctant to trade Sean Murphy. Now, if you land a DH somehow, or somebody that's going to take a lot of the DH at bats, at least against left-handed pitching, because I think Drake would DH most of the time regardless, then maybe an option opens up. Sean Murphy, when you think about who he can be offensively and what we have seen from him at times, and then what happened this past year, we find out about, the hip and how bad it really was. And he never let on. And I can appreciate that, right? When a guy like that is your teammate, you appreciate that he would play through that level of pain. But now we know it has significantly affected him. And I don't want to give up on that just yet. So his value is not where it probably will end up being this year, assuming that he is healthy and starts the year and everything is right. And he could take those big, strong hacks that he takes all the time, regardless of count. We know the type of hitter he is, right? Yeah. He's not going to change from that. And so, give me your 15 or 20 home runs to go along with your plus defense. And all of a sudden you're talking about a top 5 catcher in the league again. So he can get there. I think that's the thing that you just, like you said, it's hard to find. Drake is young. He was great. It was awesome to see him win the Rookie of the Year. I had him on my radio show today, and I told him I felt like I was nervous, like it was one of my own kids. I'd never been so worked up about somebody winning an award and pulling so hard for it to happen. So that was fantastic, but you always have to protect against those things. So you're certainly not looking to give away Sean Murphy. Right. If for some reason the finances really worked out and you did have the DH bats available for somebody else, and then you also had a glove that you like behind the plate that then serves as number 2 to Drake Baldwin, then that works as well. But I think, and we'll see, the offseason just started. But for me, I'd love to get down to Northport, and they're both still Braves.
Yeah, I think that's just the best plan going forward. And to your point, the value is just not quite there with Sean Murphy because of the injury, because of he's rehabbing right now from the surgery and everything. And we've seen when he plays on a regular basis, I think about that month in 2023 when Travis d'Arnaud was out with the concussion. He hit 300 for a month, almost double-digit home runs, carried the offense, played almost every single day. And my thought process is early in the year when the hip still wasn't bothering him that much, feels like he could possibly get back there. All right. In just a second, I want to get your thoughts on this new coaching staff. Walt Weiss has a full staff now. And to me, from the outside, it's a really good blend of the familiarity and new voices and new perspectives. We'll talk about that next right here on Braves Today. Welcome back to Braves Today. Lindsay Crosby joined by the great CJ Nitkowski. Thank you for your time, CJ. I really do appreciate it. Walt Weiss getting the job. I don't know if you're like a lot of the fans, a little bit surprised because everything we had heard was about some of the flashy voices, the flashy names, the George Lombard, the Danny Lehman from the Dodgers, things like that. But looking now at having this full staff in place, feels like the Braves did a really good job of bringing in some interesting young rising stars in the game. A Jeremy Hefner as pitching coach, Antoine Richardson as first base coach. Did they maybe not have enough continuity? I think one of the questions I got asked on the radio last week was, is there not enough continuity here? Because you have Walt Weiss, you have Tim Hires, Eddie Perez, and then it's a whole new staff. Or do you think Alex and Walt kind of walk the line between new guys and familiar voices?
I think they're in a good spot. Tommy Watkins is a really likable guy. I've asked around for any of the coaches that have joined, new guys that I didn't know, people that I knew either covered them, been around them, whatever it may be, and all the opinions have been really positive, right? I mean, thinking about Darnell Coles was in D.C. Kevin Franson is a good buddy of mine, does TV there. Justin Morneau knows Tommy Watkins well, asked him about him, and everybody just up and down the line had a lot of really good things to say. That matters for a couple of different reasons. One, we know the Braves don't bring bad people into their clubhouse. Really, it's always been very important to them. The other part is then you know that you have those personalities, and so the meshing should happen pretty quickly. When you have new coaches, whether you're a new player going into a new clubhouse or it's a new coach coming in, there's that little kind of feel-out period, and you want to get to know who this person is. Where are they? Are they about themselves? Are they really, truly selfless and about this team? I think we'll pick up on that pretty quickly. Again, they do such a great job. Walt made a kind of a funny joke about it when we had him on MLB Network Radio about, if you're going to come in, if Alex Anthopoulos is interested in you, you can guarantee that he's going to hunt down your first grade teacher and they're going to be interrogated. We're going to find out all about you. So from that standpoint, you feel like you're bringing in some really good people. There's been a lot of talk about the age stuff, right? The idea of getting younger. Personally, I don't care how old those coaches are. You can be 15 or you can be 75. Are you aligned with what we're trying to do here? Are you built to do it? Again, are you selfless? Are you about the players? Are you strictly about winning? And then do you have the knowledge to be able to coach well? Because it's tough to do. I don't care about your name. I don't care about your playing career, quite honestly, because there are some great players that aren't necessarily great at coaching. They have a hard time sometimes when you've accomplished so much in the game of relating to the average player or the 26th man on the team, last man on the bench, maybe your last guy in the bullpen. I think it's a good thing sometimes when you see a young guy like Jeremy Hefner, who pitched in the big leagues, wasn't spectacular, but certainly had pitched in the big leagues, got the experience that you want, jumps right in with the New York Mets at a really young age, and they had some really good runs. You saw how upset their fans were that both of those guys ended up leaving. It was a nice little coup, right? The Mets maybe panicked a little bit on their staff because they didn't make the postseason, because they invested so much in their team. And unfortunately, coaches take the fall. The turnover for coaches in our game is absurd. I mean, it is for managers right now. When this year starts, we're going to be under 3 years average tenure of a big league manager. So the head guy being Walt, who already has all of those relationships developed and established, and no doubt in my mind that Alex Anthopoulos had talked to some of the lead dogs in the clubhouse about that. And does this make sense? And do you okay? How you feel about it, all that kind of stuff. And you get the vote of confidence that you were looking for. I'm really glad he got the job. I was concerned that he wasn't going to get a shake. I didn't know how the whole thing was going to go down. We're kind of guessing from the outside a little bit. I'm a big fan of Walt. I've said a lot of times we're from the same hometown in New York, and I always knew his name growing up. And then when I didn't meet him until I got to the big leagues, and when I did, he had told me that he used to deliver newspapers on my street when he was a kid. So we go back, and it's fun. It's super fun for me to see him here and have the success and get the opportunity. So the continuity is important. Pat Murphy's a really good example. Craig Counsell gets the big money to go to the Cubs, and it almost felt like it was like, well, Pat Murphy's here, and by default, we'll let him be our manager. He's won back-to-back Manager of the Year awards. They've won the division both years. Why? They didn't have to waste any time of establishing those relationships. Those guys that were there knew exactly who their manager was, coming into the clubhouse, knew how he was going to manage, maybe a little bit different from Craig Counsell, but they knew him. And he knew them, and he knows how to motivate. He knows how to push. Walt's in that same position. Don't be fooled. The one thing I would tell Braves fans, I think, and they know Walt, but this will be a different position. This dude is ultra competitive. He understands what it means to put this uniform on. He understands how important it is to win. He's going to be a dog. He's a nice guy, and when you talk to him, don't be fooled by maybe what you see on the outside, how an interview goes, compared to how it is in the clubhouse and the expectations that are going to be put on this team.
Yeah, it to me, thinking about where this team is in the competitive window, keeping that continuity, keeping that guy that knows everybody, and I'd say probably the bench coach more so than the manager really understands kind of when to push a guy, when to back off a little bit, and how to handle those guys through the grind of a 162. And so seeing that made me feel really good. And then keeping Tim Hires around, I think there was a couple fans who thought about the first half of the season, how you saw guys trying to adjust to his different way of approaching an at-bat, and the team maybe in their mind underperforming a little bit before getting really comfortable in the second half. But having him back, giving him Coles as an assistant, and then the idea of getting better and more contributions from Chipper Jones, one of those guys who was really good but can also teach it, which, like you said, not everybody can do that. I think about Barry Bonds as the hitting coach in Miami and how that didn't work out. It feels like that's, if there's a place to keep the continuity, it's there, because hitting is so much about being comfortable in you and what you're trying to do. And the changes there maybe wouldn't have been the best place to try to do something new for the third time in 3 seasons.
Can't have a hitting coach here for 10 years and then have one here for 1. I mean, it wouldn't work. And the track record's there. Tim Hires has been at it for a long time, and I played with him years ago. We were teammates in the minor leagues in Toledo back in 1996, and then a little bit in Detroit as well. So I've known him for a long time. I knew he was going to be a great fit here. This was a dream job for him, but he has accomplished a lot. It is extremely difficult for all of us, myself included, but especially from the outside, to get a feel for coaches and really what's going on, and maybe now more than ever, because personal coaches are allowed. We don't even know which guys in that clubhouse are actually using their own guys, which guys are going somewhere else because they've gotten comfortable with the coach. That is widely accepted in the game now. When I first broke in, you wouldn't even think about doing something like that, going away from the organization. That is now embraced because there's a lot of really good teachers of the game around. Corey Seager's a good example. When Corey Seager was in Texas, like, he uses his own guy. He's on the iPad every day. He's talking to his hitting coach. It's all mobile. And that's just kind of the way it's done. And so you can never look and say, well, the hitting coach isn't doing a good job if Corey Seager's having a bad month. You don't even know if how much they even really talk, quite honestly. The preparation and filtering data is really important. We saw Michael come around and have that, really big adjustment. And some people say, oh, Michael, and Tim maybe got comfortable in the second half. You don't know when he went to him with the swing adjustments, if it, and who did it and when. Michael, I think, had to kind of hit rock bottom and then make the adjustment. I mean, you're absolutely right on the continuity. But Tim Hires is here because these guys wanted him here. And guys that had a pre-existing relationship like Matt Olson wanted him here. I don't judge a coach, whether it's a pitching coach, hitting coach, pitching staff gets off to a bad start in any year. It's not the pitching coach's fault. It's always going to be the players and their ability to execute consistently. And I think on the offensive side, we saw some guys struggling. We saw some guys get off to slow starts. We did see a little bit more patience, but you never know from a velocity standpoint which guys are following which guys are pushing back a little bit. But he has a solid voice who knows the game well, puts the time in, puts these guys in the best position they can. But I've been around so many of these hitting coaches over the years, and I ask a lot of questions. And it's interesting to get different feedback from different guys over the years and be like, I tell this guy all day long, but he's just not going to make the adjustment. Little things in your swing, like talking to a guy, like they know your pitcher that day, right? So let's just say you're facing, I always use this example, you're facing what we call those high vert fastball guys, right? Justin Verlander, when he was at his prime with the breaking ball to match, and there's a lot of guys that have that fastball that plays up, has that giddy up, that induced in vertical break. Well, there are certain guys with certain swings that's just not going to play against, right? And so good hitting coaches will present that day and say, listen, your swing today, it's not going to work against this fastball. So your choice is either I got to make some adjustments, I got to get my hand above the baseball, I got to tell myself the ball's actually a full baseball higher than it is, and you might have a chance of success, or don't. It's up to you. It's your career. I can give you the information. It's up to you on how you take it. And so I always, 9.5 times out of 10, it's going to be on the players. There's not that many bad coaches out there. I don't think that exists, and they're certainly not going to make their way to an Atlanta Braves clubhouse. It's a matter of the players, whether or not they can make the adjustments.
Yeah, at this level, the bad coaches have been weeded out by this point. You're not going to see a bad guy at this level. The last thing I wanted to kind of get your thoughts on for the coaching staff is Antoine Richardson is kind of seen as a savant when it comes to base running and stolen bases in particular. And we saw Juan Soto, of all people, get close to 40 stolen bases under Antoine Richardson's tutelage. Is Matt Olson about to have a 40-40 season? Like, what are the odds of that happening? Because it feels like Antoine Richardson is kind of a savant when it comes to this.
Yeah, I don't know him very well. I've seen him from the other side and when he was coaching out on the West Coast and obviously with the Mets, and those are the things that you point to. Base running is a commitment, right? Whether it's stealing bases or just being a good base runner. I had this conversation years ago with Terry Francona, and the example that always sticks out to me is Mike Napoli. No one would ever look at Mike Napoli and say, that guy can flat out run. It's not about speed in a lot of situations. It's about commitment. He's like, that's the kind of guy I get a commitment from, to do the little things right. And that a lot of times does take your base running coach. While we'll look at the stolen bases, and those are fun, and those will catch the headlines, it's going to be those other things for me. How many guys are all the way in on making the full commitment to base running, which requires you being really alert, doing those little things, understanding where are guys played. Like if you're out on second base, like you see guys and smart baseball players are always looking over their shoulder. Where are the outfielders? What do I know about arms? Right? So that you don't have to necessarily look over your shoulder once the ball's put in play because you've done all your homework up to that point. Are you taking good secondary leads? Right? Are you committed to it every single pitch, getting the jumps that you need to be getting? Are you paying attention to pitch sequencing? Right? That's one of the things that has come up big time in this game is not so much, can you steal a base? Can you run? But do you know when to go? Pitchers now have become more conscious than ever of falling into habits that then allow base runners to take bases. Not even fast guys, right? We saw Josh Naylor. Was it that they had a great base running coach in Seattle? No, he made a commitment to it. He changed it up a little bit. He is not a burner, but all of a sudden he started running like crazy. So, yes, there are certainly things that can be taught, but it really is about making that full commitment to the little things and making sure you're doing everything you can to get the extra base.
Really excited to see which Braves figure that out this year and what they look like under Richardson's tutelage and hopefully his motivation there. In just a minute, I want to talk a little bit about some of your background and your experience and some of the I don't think everybody who listens to you on a daily basis on television for a game realizes some of the interesting things you've done in your career. We'll talk about that next right here on Braves Today. Final segment of Braves Today, Lindsay Crosby joined by CJ Nitkowski, the one and only. I don't know if people realize you've been in a movie. You've done a cameo on television. You've played in 2 different foreign baseball leagues, and you are the only pitcher on the planet to have a 1-pitch win in both Major League Baseball. And I think it was it NPB for your second one? Yeah,
so I have fun with it. It's unconfirmed, but I just doubt anybody else has done it. That's probably the best way to put it. Yeah, one in Japan, and actually the one that I had here in the States was with the Braves. We were in Colorado. And Jerry Burnitz flew out on the first pitch that I threw to right field. The inning ended. We scored a bunch of runs. I got out of the game, and then I stole a win. So, yeah, I've done it in MLB, and I've done it in MPB. Not easy to do.
I imagine not. We saw Ryan Walker of the Giants have one this year through a single pitch. I still think that you haven't quite gotten to the level of Jeff Nelson in 1995, the 1-pitch triple play that he got. But it's definitely a fun little tip, little kind of note in your cap there that not everybody has.
So I keep a report real quick on so a lot of my preparation, I have some of these built-in reports. Like if we're getting close to an immaculate inning, I can pull it up. I can look at the last time maybe a Brave did it or when's the last time we saw it in the big leagues. Brandon knows I get very excited about if a guy gets one out when the team is down and finishes an inning. I kind of joke around about the 1-pitch win alert. Potentially happening.
Hey, we do too. We like it too.
And have some fun on social. So I have one of those reports already brought up so I can look at Braves or last time it happened, all those kinds of things. So little quirky things that we got to be ready for because you never know where the game's going to take you.
But it's not just quirky things that you've added to the broadcast. Some of the stuff that you bring, I feel like it's a little bit different from we get from a lot of broadcasts. Was the pregame report on where the umpire was more and less likely to call a ball or a strike, was that something that you had access to when you pitched and that you used? or is that something you picked up only as a broadcaster? Because that's honestly one of my favorite parts of the broadcast at the very beginning is just knowing, hey, that down and away breaking ball to lefties isn't going to be there because this guy does not call that typically.
Well, I appreciate you saying that because we're always trying things and what works and kind of what grabs the attention of the viewer. And you're never going to have a 100% approval rating, but you look for those things that hopefully keep people engaged, right? Because I want, and I get to what you're asking in a minute, but ultimately for me, big picture is that I always want to get people to come along for the ride. I can tell you what happened after it happened all day long. Anybody can do that part, right? Let me get you excited or at least prepared for what might happen, what to look for today. We look for it together as the game kind of unfolds. We didn't have that level of data when I first broke into the league in 95. It was more about word of mouth. You would talk to veteran pitchers or veteran catchers that were on your club that could give you a little bit of an idea. Now we have more data than ever, which is nice. And I had it when I was in Texas for a little while. Then we lost it. Then we were able to get it from a place, but we weren't paying for that place so that we could really use it on the broadcast. And finally we got to a place now where I can access the data. There was times where I would go ask, even when I was in Texas, go ask somebody in the coach's office who would put that information together and would send it to me. So I'd have it, but we couldn't use the graphic because they were using a different service than what Bally's at the time was paying for. So again, I like it again to bring people along. There's a lot of different ways to break it down too. We can look at strictly here's the zone. I will tell Gretchen Caney, our producer, I think we need to do 2 today because we have a left-handed pitcher and a right-handed pitcher, and this guy's zone varies actually depending on whether or not it's a lefty or a righty. The key there is trying to get to it as quickly as possible without wasting a lot of time and without over talking, which is not necessarily my strength. So trying to be quick and to the point, and hopefully it sinks in, be succinct, but also get your point across. But I do like it. And then, of course, there's the days like umpires are either going to make you look really smart or really dumb, right? If that day that they just don't give that pitch away, we got a 2-seam fastball, change up lefty on the mound, there's going to be a problem for him today. And it works out. Oh, man, look how smart CJ is. But if all of a sudden that umpire's just having a different kind of day, gosh, look how dumb CJ is, right? I mean, it's fine. I'll take that chance. I'd rather, first guess or use data to give you an educated guess along the way. But I like that one. Gretchen likes that one. We try to get it in there all the time. There was my favorite, though, of this so far, my 2 years here. Brandon's so awesome. I love him. I love working with him. And, you can tell he always kind of leads me the same way, looking for that space in there. Maybe it's a borderline pitch, or we just happen to show the umpire, and then he's going to ask me about the umpire. I think we might have been in Cincinnati or St. Louis, but I told him, I was like, hey, man, I didn't get it today. For some reason, I was relying on somebody else at the time. Now I can just get it myself. And I was like, I didn't get it, so I don't have umpires today. He's like, all right. And then he went right to it. It just becomes habit so much. And I like to have fun with stuff. Like if we make mistakes, let's make fun of each other. We can correct each other. Let's not take each other too seriously. And so he's like, hey, CJ, what do we got on our home plate umpire today? And I was like, BG, I just told you like 3 minutes ago, I don't have anything on our umpire today, unfortunately. So the one time I didn't have it, we had a little fun with it.
He made a point to throw to you when you didn't have it. Yeah. And on that relationship, it feels like you and Brandon and then Wiley as kind of the third man really have a very, very entertaining and relaxed environment. And I feel like that's not always something you see on the broadcast. How was that bond, I guess, built between the three of you, and how much food was involved? Because as much as food comes up on the broadcast, I feel like that was probably how this was established, over meals while you're traveling with the team.
Well, now more than ever, too, with the new chef that we have, executive chef at Truist, who brings us unbelievable food, loves us talking about the food and what's available. I try not to be a late eater. In my perfect world, I'm actually done eating for the day by the time the game starts. He makes that very difficult when we're at home. I didn't know Brandon at all coming into this. And, for him, obviously, as a TBS kid growing up in Indiana, this was a dream job for him. For me, as someone who's now lived in Atlanta for almost 20 years, I never thought this job would even be available. I didn't even allow myself to dream about it because Jeff Francoeur is younger than me. He's locked in. He's a fan favorite. Don't even go down that path because you'll just be disappointed dreaming about it. So when that opened up, and he was the one that asked me about it. It was, it's been an incredible opportunity. So now that next step was, will it work? Right. And so coming in and going to a partner that you did not know. When I got to Texas, I worked with Dave Raymond. I knew him already. We had already established a relationship. We had done some things. It was a very easy transition. I think going in, it's a couple of things that are really important. So you have to be genuine. You have to be selfless, just like being a good teammate on the field is really important. I told Brandon from the beginning, like I just told you, I said, listen, I make a mistake. One, go ahead and correct me. And then if you want to make fun of me too, go for it. I'm in. I said, I don't take my career too seriously. It was a long time ago. You want to have fun with that kind of stuff, go for it. I don't mind it all, right? I think that try to be humble and then try to be self-deprecating because, who cares at this point? But I threw my last pitch a long time ago. I'm here to broadcast now. Something that I asked Al Michaels about actually one time. We were interviewing him, and I love talking to the greats and asking them about their analysts. And something that he told me about the best analysts that he ever had, they were the ones that would put their playing career behind them and their broadcasting career in front of them. Sure, there's times to draw from it here and there, but it is down the line. It's not the most important thing. So that was important for me that Brandon knew that going in. Same thing with Wiley. One of the games that we did this year in St. Louis when Wiley was filling in on play-by-play is I made a mistake. I said something. I had the wrong state. I remember talking about Sonny Gray or something, and I had his hometown wrong. I think I said he was from Alabama. He's from Tennessee. And Wiley, I could tell, was scared to correct me. He knew because Wiley's on top of everything. And so I told him in break, I'm like, dude, do it. Don't worry about it. I said, I want to be right. Like, I have no ego in this. We want to be right. We all make mistakes in what we do. None of us are perfect. But it's a good group. I feel grateful to be a part of it. Wiley's fantastic. I have to be careful with him now as being our full-time sideline because he can put me in a spot where I can get lazy because he's on top of so much, right? And he's gonna bring something to me and challenge me in a game, and it makes for a fun conversation because he digs in really deep that sometimes I almost back off a little bit. And so I got to be careful that I don't do that too much, right? There's a balance in there somewhere, but he is also really fun. He's also self-deprecating. I think what I've learned from calling baseball games when I started doing this a long time ago, especially on the local level, is that there are more older women fans than you probably realize that are watching the game, and they're the ones that maybe care the most, and they also are the most opinionated. That is an audience that you have to win over. I think they absolutely love Wiley Ballard. And my philosophy on that is because Wiley Ballard is the one they want their daughter or granddaughter to marry. And he's just so fun. He's a good-looking kid. He's really smart. You never know that he went to Westminster and Georgia Tech because he's just a little bit different in that regard, right? He is awesome. And so they love him. And I'll hear from him. Hey, stop busting Wiley so much. Take it easy on Wiley. I'm like, hey, we're just having fun. We're all having a good time, but they get upset if we push him a little bit too hard.
Yeah, he's a good kid. I've talked to him when he's doing college baseball, or he was in town doing college basketball on Tuesday night, and I think the older female demographic is the exact way to kind of characterize his biggest fan club. And every time I see him out in public, they're always kind of walking up and telling him how much they enjoy him on the broadcast. Final question before I get you out of here: which is harder to broadcast in, the Dodger Stadium 150 decibel PA system, or Nationals Park where you're 3.5 miles in the air? Which one's tougher to do your broadcast?
That's a great question. Because they're both difficult.
Yeah.
I think the thing that just gets on your nerves with the Dodgers is it's unnecessary. They have kind of the old school looking speakers. You feel like you're at a concert in the late 80s or the early 90s. Now, I know they've upgraded them, but they still have kind of that look. It does not need to be that loud. And we will tape our opens on the road. And so when you see that opening segment, it's taped on the road. It's live at home. There's a couple of different things that come into play and why we do it that way. And if that speaker starts blaring in the middle of us taping our open, you can't hear yourself. Even if you have earbuds in or an IFB in, and they're molded to your ear, you still can't hear yourself. It is that loud in there. It's unnecessarily annoying. And Dodger Stadium is fun to call games at, for sure. But that part is really irritating. DC, it's tough. It is. And because the way that team has been right now, it's the only ballpark where the broadcast booth is above every single seat. Right, there's some high booths out there, but it's the only
Texas
one where
is
you're
a high booth, right?
Yeah, you'll look down at the highest fan. There's fans above you in Texas. There's fans above you in Pittsburgh. There are no fans above you in Washington, D.C. It can be a challenge. You get a nice view of the Capitol and other things, not a great view of the ballpark. The thing that really throws you off, and this is more on play-by-play, is just when a ball is hit, the trajectory of the baseball and what you think it's going to do compared to what you're used to seeing. I will call a lot of what we do off the monitor, which I think is not a bad idea anyway, because you're seeing exactly what the fan is seeing at home. And we went through COVID, right? We did that the entire time. We called the games off monitors, and I actually realized it's not terrible because there's times when you're watching a game, right? And you're going to see guys slide into second, and I'm watching it from the booth, and I didn't realize that the ball trickled out of the shortstop's glove. But you're sitting at home on television going, come on, dude, you can't, it's right there. And so it actually makes some sense sometimes to pay a little bit closer attention to the monitor. And when you're in Washington, D.C., you're forced to do that.
Yeah, it's just so hard to do. Well, CJ, thank you for your time. You've been, I think, one of the better additions to the broadcast we've had in a long time, simply because like we said, the data, the camaraderie you have with the guys. I know you said you're a one-trick pony and you're not going to go do basketball like both those guys do. Have you thought about in the off season or maybe early in the year going back and trying a little bit of college baseball again? Because you did that a little bit earlier in your career. Have you thought about going back and giving that a shot for a weekend, some non-conference action?
Probably not, just because I don't follow it as closely.
Sure.
I love all the exposure that college baseball is getting. My youngest son, who's a senior in high school, is a Georgia Tech commit to play there next year. Actually, we just had signing day today, so I'm sure I'll be paying even closer attention, and have been here recently. College games are hard. You know, I broke in doing college games, and I remember those were the first games I'd ever done.
Right?
Yeah, I did it for CBS. I actually called the St. John's game where I went to school. Then I went down to Annapolis the next day and called a game at Navy. There was 40 people in the stands. There was no press box. It was like 35 degrees. Those games are hard because you don't know the guys. I remember thinking, man, it'd be much easier to do like a Yankee game or do any big league game because you have a feel for the players and who they are and their history. Or a lot of these names I'm hearing for the first time, and I really don't know their tendencies or much about them. So college games are hard. They're a great place to start. I would say that's probably some of the worst work that I've done. I'm glad it happened there and not on a bigger stage, because it's a great place to learn. But I don't think I would be very good, quite honestly. And it's tough to come in and just kind of do one game too. It's why I love doing local. I was doing national stuff for Fox when I left it to take the Rangers job, and I was still under contract. There's local games are way more fun. You can dig in more. You can have some fun with your partner. It's a lot harder when you're just doing one and done. And for me, college games are a real challenge.
Yeah. All right. So can you tell everybody all of the stuff you have going on so they can follow you? Because we have Southpaw and Sons, we have the radio, we have the Drive-In podcast. Where can Braves fans go to get everything that you do, get CJ Nitkowski in their ears, they're on their chest on a daily basis?
Well, I would say limit it. You don't want too much. I don't like being overexposed either. But, for social media, X is where I do everything. I keep my Instagram private. I do get a pretty decent amount of requests that I let go there, keep that just for kind of friends and people that I know in real life. But X is where I'll do any social media commenting. Obviously, we have the Braves games. I do my radio show on MLB Network Radio, which is Sirius XM Channel 89. Right now, it's 2 to 5 every day. With Ryan Spielborgs, which is a lot of fun. The Drive-In podcast, it's funny. I see teach their own, but there's something about when people are doing, like, whether it's analysts or other people, where they're doing like walking the dog or whatever, like Lou Merlone with the Red Sox, who I love. We played against each other in college. But I'm like, I don't want my face on there. Right. So he'll be like walking with the camera, like right here. And I'm like, well, I love the idea because the stuff is great. But I don't want to put my face on there. I was like, why don't I just do it the other way? And while I'm driving to the ballpark, because I'm having all of these thoughts going in anyway. So trying to put that together and have something quick, again, trying to get you to look ahead to maybe the game or just whatever's going on with the team. So I'll do that as the kind of moment strikes just for fun. And then the Southpaw and Son stuff was just, it was so fun with Brandon and a little brand building for us. There's a line in there. And I told my wife, I was like, if this ever seems like obnoxious or self-serving, please let me know. We just do it for charity. Good. We do it for fun. And then what was really cool about it, too, is that my oldest son, who's 26, who moved out here recently and lives down near Decatur, it was a nice moment for us because we did it together. He was the one who essentially built it and learned how to build an online shop and everything that went along with it and getting the name established. And so it was a really nice exercise, quite honestly, just for he and I, the time that we got to spend together working on it. And then whenever a fun idea comes along, if it's a frozen pizza or whatever it may be, we have some fun with it. And that's really the idea behind it, is like all of this. Like, we love the game. We're passionate about what we do. We're passionate about the Braves, but we also want to have some fun along the way.
Yeah. And like you said, it's for charity. That's always kind of the best part there. CJ, thank you for your time. Appreciate having you. And hopefully we'll talk to you again soon.
I appreciate you having me, Lindsay. It was a good time.
That'll do it for this episode of Braves Today. I want to thank our guest, CJ Nitkowski. Do me a favor. If you're listening on audio, leave us a 5-star review, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you know when we go live with the next episode, drop a short, whatever else it may be. Until next time, this has been Braves Today.